things are worse than ever, thought the poor child. For I never was so small as this before. Never, and I declare it's too bad that it is. As she said these words, her foot slipped, and in another moment, splash! She was up to her chin in salt water. Her first idea was that she had somehow fallen into the sea. And in that case, I can go back to the railway, she said to herself. Alice had been to the seaside once in her life and had come to the general conclusion that wherever you go on the English coast, you find a number of bathing machines in the sea. Sometimes children digging in the sand with wooden spades, and then a row of lodging houses behind them, a railway station. However, she soon made out that she was in the pool of tears which she had wept when she was 9 feet high. I wish I hadn't cried so much, said Alice as she swam about, trying to find her way out. I shall be punished for it now, I suppose, by being drowned in my own tears. That will be a weird thing, to be sure. However, everything is weird today. Just when she heard something splashing about in the pool a little way off, she swam nearer to make out what it was. At first she thought it must be a walrus or a hippopotamus, but then she remembered how small she was now, and she soon made out that it was only a mouse that had slipped in like herself. Would it be any use to you now, thought Alice, to speak to this mouse? Everything is so out of the way down here that I should think very likely it could talk. At any rate, there's no harm in trying. So she began. Oh, Mouse, do you know the way out of this pool? I'm very tired of swimming about here. Oh, Mouse! Alice thought this must be the right way to speaking to a mouse. She had never done such a thing before, but she remembered having seen her brother's Latin grammar, a mouse of a mouse to a mouse o' mouse. The mouse looked at her rather inquisitively, and seemed to her to wink with one of its little eyes, but it said nothing. Perhaps it doesn't understand English, thought Alice. I dare say it's a French mouse, come over with William the Conqueror. For with all her knowledge of history, Alice had no very clear notion of how long anything had happened, so she began again. Oui est ma chatte? Which was the first sentence in her French lesson book. The mouse gave a sudden leap of the water, and seemed to quiver all over with fright. Oh, I beg your pardon, cried Alice hastily, afraid that she may have hurt the poor animal's feelings. I quite forgot you didn't like cats. Not like cats, cried the mouse in a shrill, passionate voice. Would you like cats if you were me? Well, perhaps not, said Alice in a soothing tone. Don't be angry about it. And yet, I wish I could show you our cat Dinah. I think you'd take a fancy to cats if you could only see her. She's such a dear, quiet thing, Alice went on, half to herself as she swam lazily in the pool. And she sits purring so nicely by the fire, licking her paws and washing her face. And she's such a nice, soft thing to nurse, and she's such a capital for one catching mice. Oh, I beg your pardon, Alice cried again, for this time the mouse was bristling all over, and she felt certain it must be really offended. We won't talk about her anymore if you'd rather not. We indeed, cried the mouse, who was trembling down to the end of his tail. As if I would talk on such a subject. Our family has always hated cats. Nasty, low, vulgar things. Don't let me hear the name again. I won't indeed, said Alice in a great hurry to change the subject of conversation. Are you fond of dogs? The mouse did not answer, so Alice went on eagerly. There's such a nice little dog near our house. I should like to show you. A little bright-eyed terrier, you know, with such long curly brown hair, and it'll fetch things when you throw them at it, and it'll sit up and beg for its dinner, all sorts of things. I can't remember half of them, and it belongs to a farmer, you know. And he says it's so useful. It's worth 100 pounds. He says it kills all the rats and oh dear, cried Alice in a sorrowful tone. I'm afraid I have offended it again. For the mouse was swimming away from her as hard as it could go and making quite a commotion in the pool as it went. So she called softly after it, Mouse dear, do come back again, and we won't talk about cats or dogs either, if you don't like them. When the mouse heard this, it turned around and swam slowly back to her. Its face was quite pale, with passion, Alice thought, and it said in a low, trembling voice, Let us get to the shore, and then I'll teach you my history, and you'll understand why it is I hate cats and dogs. It was a high time to go, for the pool was getting quite crowded with the birds and the animals that had fallen into it. There were a duck, and a dodo, and a lory, and an eaglet, and several other curious creatures. Alice led the way, and the whole party swam to the shore. Chapter 3. A Caucus Race and a Long Tail. They were indeed a weird-looking party that assembled at the bank. The birds with the draggled feathers, the animals with their fur clinging close to them, and all dripping wet, cross, and uncomfortable. The first question, of course, was how to get dry again. They had a consultation about this, and after a few minutes, it seemed quite natural to Alice to find herself talking familiarly with them as if she had known them all her life. Indeed, she had quite a long argument about the Lori who had last turned sulky, and would only say, "I'm older than you, and must know better." And this Alice would not allow without knowing how old it was, and as the Lori positively refused to tell its age, there was no more to be said. At last, the mouse, who seemed to be the person of authority among them, called out, "Sit down, all of you, and listen to me. I'll soon make you dry enough." They all sat down at once, and in a large ring with the mouse in the middle. Alice kept her eyes anxiously fixed on it, for she felt she would catch a bad cold if she did not get dry very soon.
"Ahem,"
said the mouse with an important air.
"Are you all ready? This is the driest thing I know. Silence all around, if you please." William the Conqueror, whose cause was favored by the Pope, was soon submitted to by the English, who wanted leaders and had been late much accustomed to usurpation and conquest. Edwin and Morcar, the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria. "Ugh," said the Lori with a shiver. "I beg your pardon," said the mouse, frowning but very politely. "Did you speak?"
No, said the Lori hastily.
"I thought you did,"
said the mouse.
I proceed. Edwin and Morcar, the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria, declared for him, and even Stigton, the patriotic Archbishop of Canterbury, found it advisable. "What?" said the duck. "Found it," the mouse replied rather crossly. "Of course you know what it means." "I know what it means. Well, enough when I find the thing," said the duck. "It's generally a frog or a worm. The question is, what did the Archbishop find?"
The mouse did not notice this question, but hurriedly went on.
"Found it advisable to go with Edgar Atheling to meet William and offer him the crown. William's conduct at first was moderate, but the insolence of his nomans. How are you getting on now, my dear?"
it continued, turning to Alice as it spoke.
"As well as ever,"
said Alice in a melancholy tone.
"It doesn't seem to get dry to me at all."
"In that case," said the dodo solemnly, raising his feet, "I'll move what the meeting adjourned from the immediate adoption of more energetic remedies."
"Speak English,"
said the eaglet. "I don't know the meaning of half those long words, and what's more, I don't believe you do either." And the eaglet bent down his head and hid a smile. Some of the other birds tittered audibly. "What was I going to say?" the dodo in an offended tone. "Was that the best thing to get us dry would be the caucus race."
"What is a caucus race?"
said Alice, not that she wanted much to know, but the dodo had paused as if it thought that somebody ought to speak, and no one else seemed to be inclined to say anything. "Why," said the dodo, "the best way to explain it is to do it, and as you may like to try the thing yourself some winter day, I will tell you how the dodo managed it." First, it marked out a race course, in a sort of circle. The exact shape doesn't matter, it said. And then when the party were placed along the course, here, late, there was no 1, 2, 3, and away, but they began running when they liked, and left off when they liked. So it was not easy to know when the race was over. However, when they had been running half an hour or so, they were quite dry again. The dodo suddenly called out, "The race is over!" And they all crowded around it, panting and asking, "But who has won?" This question the dodo could not answer without a great deal of thought, and it sat for a long time with one finger pressed upon its forehead, the position of which you usually see Shakespeare on the pictures of him, while the rest waited in silence. At last the dodo said, "Everybody has won, and all must have prizes." "But who is to give us the prizes?" "Why, she, of course," said the dodo, pointing to Alice with one finger, and the whole party at once crowded round her, calling out in a confused way, "Prizes! Prizes!" Alice had no idea what to do, and in despair she put her hand in her pocket and pulled out a box of comfits. Luckily, the salt water had not got to it, and handed them round as prizes. There was exactly one apiece all around.
"Oh, but she must have a prize for herself, you know," said the mouse.
"Of course," the dodo replied very gravely. "What else have you got in your pocket?" he went on, turning to Alice.
"Only a thimble,"
Alice said. "Hand it over here," said the dodo. Then they all crowded around her once more while the dodo solemnly presented the thimble, saying, "We beg your acceptance of this elegant thimble." And when it had finished this sort of speech, they all cheered. Alice thought the whole thing very absurd, but they all looked so grave that she did not dare to laugh, and as she could not think of anything else to say, she simply bowed and took the thimble, looking as solemn as she could. The next thing was to eat the comfits. This caused some noise and confusion as the large birds complained that they could not taste theirs, and the small ones choked and had to be patted on the back.